Good morning, everybody. Well, I'm back at it again. Out walking. 30-minute walk. Get the blood flowing, get everything going. Still stuffed up, but I gotta get to doing something. I can't just lay around anymore. So, got a few projects in the works. One is opening up the Badger's Den again, getting it all cleaned out, lined out. The Jeep's got an issue. I'll talk to you about it later, but probably be doing a Jeep project this weekend. Anywho, first things first, finish up my morning walk, take a few deep breaths, and grab some coffee. Then, time to get to work. Anywho, I'm gonna finish the rest of my walk here in peace, and we'll see y'all in a little bit. Alright guys, so after what seems like months and months and years, we're back in the Badger's Den, and it's a fucking wreck. So first things first, time to make it not a wreck. I'm that guy. Everything has a place, and not a fucking thing is in its place. So it's time to put everything back in fucking place so that I can get to work. But first things first, let's get all the doors open, get a little air in here, get a little sunlight, and see what we can get going. Here we go. Alright, time to start putting up some tools, cleaning up the floor, moving some bikes around, getting the big ass generator and the chainsaw put up. Hopefully we are done hurricaning for the year, and yeah, let's get this party started. Alright, well, progress is being made. I might actually be able to work on something in here soon. Look at all this that was under my benches and on my floor, and that's just not how I usually keep my shop. I always keep it nice and neat with everything in its place. So that was a challenge, but anyway, we're about done with it. Then we're gonna put the Jeep in here, and we're gonna figure out what's wrong with the rear end. I'll explain it all when I grab the Jeep. All right, the garage is clean. Look at that. Can actually like get some work done. All the trash is out of it. All the bikes between here and here, because I had to take the Jeep for a run. But anyway, there she is. For those of you that follow on, you probably know about the Jeep. For those of you that are new, let me introduce you to my Jeep. It's an '88 Jeep Wrangler. When I bought it, I had no idea that '88 was the second year of the Jeep Wrangler. So, I had no idea. It's also what they consider like the black sheep of the family, because it has square headlights. Square headlights. Most of the Jeeps do not have that. I'm okay with that. Like, if you guys have been around long enough to know me, you know that I like to have stuff that nobody else has. So if you hate the square headlights, then that's probably the thing I'm gonna look to buy. But anyway, that being said, we bought this thing about 5 years ago. In the 5 years, we've put a few thousand miles on it. We don't drive it a lot. We bought it for a beach buggy. We bought it for not a lot of money. The biggest part about it is these Jeeps are notorious for rust. And so we looked and looked and looked for a Jeep, and all of them were really rusted. And they usually rust right about here, right about where the cross member for the transfer case is. And I have literally went and looked at them, and the transfer case was not connected to the frame any longer because it was rusted that bad. So we found this old beater. She was in pretty good shape, 2.5, 4-cylinder, but we had some things we wanted to do to it. So the first thing we did when we got it was we stripped everything out of it, and we went ahead and semi-rhino lined it. It's not called rhino lining. I forget what it's called. We bought it, a kit from O'Reilly's, and did it ourselves. But we did the roll bars, we did the entire interior, as you can see here. But it has been fantastic. Although, we also did the door panels. I do not recommend that. We repainted the dash. That was gray, and now of course it's black. And then it did not have AC when we bought it, so I installed the entire AC system myself. You can buy a kit for that. So I put AC in it because Mama Badger wanted AC. We don't hardly ever use the AC. Notice that the top's on. What we've learned in Florida is if you leave the top on, it gives you shade. When it's 1,000 degrees outside, that shade is pretty nice. You still get a lot of air, but that shade will keep you cooler. The AC helps as well. But anyway, now that I've introduced you to the Jeep, oh, we also put the sound bar in it. It didn't have any kind of sound in it, so I bought the sound bar offline and installed it. Otherwise, it pretty much sits the way it is. We did get a new top for it because the top that was on it was absolute crap. It sat for almost a year because I couldn't find a computer for it, and it was not running. So I did find a computer. When I plugged the computer in, it's been running beautifully since then. But we've done nothing to it. So we keep humming and hawing about keeping it or getting a newer one, and I think we finally decided this summer we're going to keep the damn thing. So like I told her, if we're going to keep it, then let me do some work to it. So I'm going to do some work to it. First off, we put brand new tires on it. It was still running on the same tires it had on it when we originally bought it. Number two, before we left on our trip, somebody rear-ended us. So they kind of fucked this all up. I'm going to replace that, no big deal. But the thing I got to work on today is I got in and was driving it the other day, and my brake pedal went almost to the floor. Super freaking mushy. So I, of course, opened up the brake fluid reservoir, and the front compartment was completely empty. Well, the front compartment goes to the rear brakes. So I'm 99.99999% sure that I've got a rear wheel cylinder that's leaking, but I haven't pulled it apart. And I did make a phone call to O'Reilly's asking them if they had some. And I was informed that there are two different sizes of brakes. I imagine they still have the same rear wheel cylinders, but there's two different sizes, and that I would need to take it apart and tell them what size. So that's what I'm getting ready to do. I'm gonna jack this up, pull off the tire, see if I can figure out what size it is, and then see if they've got a rear wheel cylinder for me, and make sure that, of course, that's it. You can look at the backing plate on your rear wheel, and you can see fluid. So, like I said, 99.99% chance that's what it is. But let's confirm that. Here we go. Alright, so that I can kind of show you what I'm talking about, how you can see it. So, if you'll notice, this side is really dry. Hopefully you can see that. Dry at the bottom. Let's go to this side. See how it's wet around the screws, the bolt holes? And then it's also wet there at the very bottom of the drum. So if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet that that side is the one that has the leak. But we'll find out. We're going to jack it up, pull that wheel off, and see what we've got. So I was right. First off, I got really lucky. I pulled it off. The drum came right off. A lot of times you have to beat these damn things off. This one came right off. Shoes still look pretty good. You can see the buildup there. But right there, this side right here is the one that's leaking. You can see the moisture around it. And then if you lift that cup up, you'll see a lot more. But anywho, that's it. I'm going to replace that part if I can get one. So we'll reach out to O'Reilly, see if they've got one. They may have to order one. If they do, I can wait for that. And then, yeah, we're going to take this apart. I will tell you, since I'm not doing anything else, I'm going to clean this all up really good with brake clean. And then I am going to pull these springs and probably just do the cylinder and not mess with anything else. So I'll pull this spring, the 2 springs there, that one and that one, and then I can usually just pull these out, put a new one in, bleed it out, and we'll be ready to go. I'm gonna look at the other side. I don't think it's leaking, and if it's not leaking, I'm not gonna replace it. Now that goes against everything that I've ever said when I was a mechanic. It was always, well, if you're gonna replace one, you need to replace both of them. That's what I was always taught. Now that I'm away from the industry, I don't believe that personally. I'll be honest. That other wheel cylinder could last 200,000 miles and this one could go out in 20,000 miles. You just don't know. There's no way to tell. Mechanical things break. Some of them last for freaking ever. So it's just hard to tell if you need to replace it or not. So I'm not going to replace it. And you know what? If the other side goes out, guess what? I will pull it apart. I'll replace it then. But until then, let's see if we can find some parts. Remember earlier when I said they said there was 2 different sizes on there? Well, this says the maximum diameter is 10.90. So I'm going to guess that's the 10-inch one, because if it was 11-inch one, it would be over 11 inches. Am I wrong? Anyway, we'll see if that works. We're going to give them a call now. All right, so sometimes I don't explain stuff very well, and you know, I always assume that everybody, you know, knows this, but then I just talked to the O'Reilly's guy, and I'm like, I need a wheel cylinder, and he had no fucking clue what a rear wheel cylinder was. So I showed it to you guys earlier. I have pulled the old one out. There it is. So the fluid runs into it. As you press the brakes, it pushes these out, which expand the brake shoes, and that's what makes it grip the rotor, or the drum, I guess I should say. Anyway, so to get that out of there, I just pulled the 2 springs out of my way, and it's 2 bolts and a brake fluid line. So you pull the 2 bolts, the brake fluid line, pull the old one out. I'm going to take these, you reuse these. I don't know if you guys can see that. But those, with the slots, they go around the brake shoe. So you reuse those, and you just put them into the new one. So I'm going to do that, get this all cleaned up, put back together, and then most importantly, I'm going to bleed it out. You got to bleed all the air out of the system after you've opened the system like this. Really not a big deal. Anyway, a little better explanation for those of you that don't or have no experience with drum brakes, because they are like old. This is an old vehicle, and that guy had no clue what I was asking for. We did find one. It looks to be the right one, but sometimes I forget that people just don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to work. Hi guys, that's it. It took me, I don't know, in total, by recording and all, probably 45 minutes to do it. Pretty easy job. She's all ready. I'm going to put the drum back on, put her all back together, take it for a test drive, and then I'm going to call it good. And then I'm going to call it quits for the day. I think I've got a lot done, being that I've been sick. So I think it's time to race a little Gran Turismo. Anyway, what I learned today. I learned a couple things today. First off, don't assume that people have a clue about parts and automotive parts, even though they work in an automotive parts store. Secondly, there are 2 different sizes of rear brake drums on a 1988 Jeep Wrangler. Who knew? Anyway guys, I'll leave you with that, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.